It seemed he couldn't fail. Everything he touched turned to gold. And then a rush decision was made so he could get home to see his baby boy take his first steps, and it changed everything forever. He lived to regret his decision until he changed his mind about what his life was really for. A 2,000-pound bale of hay shattered his neck, leaving him a quadriplegic. But his dreams were not paralyzed that day. He became an example to many people of what's really possible. Have you ever faced maybe some adversity in your own life that you're not sure how to navigate? Maybe you've encountered a setback. Maybe you're in the middle of one right now. We all face them, that's for sure. Today on the show, we hear from Chad Hymas, who the Wall Street Journal calls one of the most 10 inspirational people on the entire planet. At 37 years of age, Chad is the youngest person ever to receive the CPAE award and be inducted into the National Speaker Hall of Fame. Last year, Chad spoke at 220 different events, traveling just over 300,000 miles and speaking on 5 continents and in 4 countries. Chad has shared his personal message and entertained many audiences from organizations such as Wells Fargo, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Ford, Coca-Cola, and even the Utah Jazz. He's a member of the National Speakers Association and is a certified speaking professional, a designation achieved by fewer than 8% in the speaking industry. Chad maintains his hobby and dream of managing a 5,100-acre elk preserve with his father, Kelly. He has raced in marathons, and in the summer of 2003, set a world record by wheeling his chair from Salt Lake City to Las Vegas, a 513-mile trek. Chad's greatest accomplishment is that he remains a devoted husband to his loving wife, Shondell, and a proud father to their 4 children, Christian, Kyler, Gracie, and Caleb. Chad Hymas, that is quite a resume. Welcome to the Champion Forum podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, it was kind of lengthy, almost overkill.
Hey, I think it warrants some intro. Whenever you have somebody that has accomplished what you have, I think it's important that the audience knows what is really possible in the face of some challenges.
Some people might think, man, wheeling a chair 513 miles, that's probably not the smartest thing in the world to do. And I would agree with those people.
Well, I'm sure that that took a lot of prep work, and that's an amazing feat. I've watched some of the YouTube videos where you talk about that trek and the preparation of that. And we may talk a little bit about that today as well. But, Chad, I've been following your material. We were introduced by a couple of your friends, Ty Bennett and Clint Pulver, who was also on the show, and they speak very highly of you. And so I started digesting your content, and you have a tremendous message. Not only is your life an example, which is the best example we can give, but I think there's a lot of leaders out there right now that are looking for answers as well. And maybe to tee up, a little bit about your messaging, maybe tell me and introduce the audience, what was life like prior to the 2001 accident, and, lead us up to that day. Like, what was life like there? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about that day.
Sure. Yeah. As we dive into this a little bit, I usually don't share my story a whole lot. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. And yes, you're right. It's all over the internet. And there's some great metaphors that you talked about. We talked about when we start talking about the marathon, there's a lot of great metaphors there. And we talked about leadership. That's kind of what we're going into now as we prelude into the eve of April 1st, 2001, a life-altering pandemic crisis, which everybody is going through right now that's listening to this podcast, and might have seen some of the blurbs on social media. Leadership is identified by behavior, not announced by a title. And I have learned that through this experience. As I was called a leader prior to the accident, where I had 52 employees, I was their boss. I was also called an owner of a company. I was also called a father because I had 2 kids. And I was also called by the title of a husband because I was married. And I thought I was pretty good at all those, in all those leadership roles. But I've since learned that through my experiences and my travels throughout the world, that when it comes to leadership, it is an overglorified term I believe. It's just my opinion. In that I think it's demonstrated more by people's behavior, like you were talking about, but things speak for themselves, rather than a title that's given. In other words, just because I have children does not make me a father. I have to demonstrate what that looks like by being visible felt, not just at their games or at my daughter's rodeos or at Caleb's soccer game, but maybe that's wheeling up to his chair and saying, hey, buddy, can you show me what you're doing on your homework project? Teach me, bud. Help me out a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't like the way my daughter's behaving in school. I guess I can take away her car or her iDevice, which she would hate. Or I might want to go up to her and say, hey, are you cool to help me get loaded up? And let's go over and let's go watch a movie at the movie theater. Or, tonight, you pick the movie. Let's watch it. What do you want for dinner? I'll grab it. Let's do it. I'd love to spend some time with you. And all right, Anastasia, in my mind, I'd rather watch James Bond or Tombstone. I'm cool with Anastasia. Let's do it. So life before the accident, it was that. I ran a crew of 52 men. I was growing the dream of the ranch, which is where we're at today. Ironically, it's come to fruition full circle, but that comes years down the road from where we're talking right now. Shondell and I have been married for 6 years to that point, had been dating and together for 9. And so it was a fairly fresh marriage, if you will, a fresh family. The boys were 3 and 1. And that's what led up to that. I had the 52 employees to grow the dream of really being a rancher and a farmer. That I know that maybe sound like a little bit of an outwardly dream, or maybe not a common dream for a lot of people to be a farmer or rancher. But my dream has always been to make brown things green, to raise horses and elk on lush fields like we would see in the areas of Kentucky. Tennessee has a lot of that. Back there in the South, they've got some beautiful fields. And of course, I'm out west on the west side of the Rockies. Denver's on the east side of the Rockies. And so we don't have the fields where they are naturally irrigated. We pull water from the ground to water those fields. But that said, I just always wanted to create that and make a living doing so by being a guide, a hunting guide. I always wanted to be a farmer and be a guide. Tough living, but one that can be lucrative if you develop the right foundation. And so that's what I was building. And that leads up to that night. That's what I was creating. Shondell, if you asked her, she would say, I was the husband that came home after a long day's work and went downstairs into my lazy boy chair, which is exactly true. Turned on my ESPN news and the ESPN games and whatever college game night was on that night, if it was wintertime or fall, and get that on the TV on Thursday nights, Friday nights, and Saturday nights. That's after working 6 or 7 days a week. And Shondell would bring me dinner, and I would have dinner down there and enjoy the game, and she'd come take the plate. That I'm almost embarrassed to share that, but that's kind of what it was like. It pictures Shondell as kind of a servant. Which she is today. I don't necessarily like Shondell's help, but I'm very grateful. I do travel the world alone, but when I'm home, Shondell does like to help and take care of me. So that's 21 years ago. That's the painted picture. We were building the dream together, but I'm not sure I was the greatest husband. And I'm not even sure I was a great or a good husband. I just know that I was a husband. I'm not saying I was a bad husband. I just didn't do anything spontaneous. I didn't, at least not in the more recent days leading up to the accident. One thing that is kind of cool, though, that I would like to mention and take credit for is the night before the accident, so the day before, this would have been April 2nd, Shondell and I got into a little bit of a spat, and it was regarding that I came home and I would rest because I was tired after getting up at 4 and getting home at 8, and she wanted more of my time, and I didn't think that she understood that I felt like I was giving her everything that she had ever dreamed of, and I was looking at things from a monetary standpoint and from a worldly standpoint. And we went to bed, and she was sad. She was sad that I didn't quite see things from her perspective. The next day, as I went to work, I thought a lot about what she was trying to say and if I really listened or not. And as I was thinking about that, some music I had playing on the radio came on. So I would send her those. I'd say, hey, turn it to 100 FM, 100.3 FM. Shondell, I need you to turn it to 97.5 real quick, hurry. And I would send her those messages, and I would call her and tell her that I was going to do better. And it would be that night that I would have my accident. Not 6 hours later, I'd be trapped
Yeah.
underneath the bale of hay. And so Shondell shares that sometimes when she talks, which I do remember that. I remember that very, very clearly. So it
I
makes
didn't
me
know
feel like,
that.
hey, I have the open mind to try and do and be better. Now, would I have done that without I can't answer that, but
Yeah.
I do know that I was on track to do better,
Yeah.
at least at that particular point. So anyway, thanks
Yeah.
for asking. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
No, that's great perspective, and I think it helps the audience understand what this transition might have looked like. And I didn't know that part of your story, Chad, as far as that, that private, intimate conversation that you had with your wife. But that kind of tees us up to that day on April 3rd. April 2nd, you're having a conversation with your wife. April 3rd, you're saying, I'm going to be better. I'm going to do better. You're sending her songs to listen to. But then you got a call from her. You got a call from Shondell that your baby son is about to take his first steps. And you rush to get your chores done so that you could get home. And that's when the accident happens. And for those that are listening that don't know the story, can you take us through that event and the condition that left you in as a result of that accident?
Yeah, I'd sent some flowers home that day uh, as part of the recovery process from the preceding day and what I went through. And she'd called me to thank me for those. And then we hung up. And then within a matter of minutes, not an hour, but a matter of minutes, I got a phone call back saying, hey, Kyler just took us first. So things were on the up and up, after having a little bit of a spat or an argument, if you will. I wouldn't even call it an argument, but definitely she didn't understand where I was coming from. And I did not understand where she was coming from. After that, things were on the up and up and looking pretty good. And she said, I need you, if you can, to hurry home. Kyler just took his first 2 steps. Now you can play ball with both boys in the garage, because the 3-year-old I had already been playing ball with quite a bit in the garage, and basketball is our favorite. Yeah. So I told her I'd get the crews lined up and I'd get my butt there for sure. Maybe kind of as a redeeming ticket from the preceding day. I told her I needed to stop by the field so I wouldn't have to go back out. And so I got all 52 guys lined up. I told them what I was going to do. I was transparent. They said, how about it? They supported me. And every one of them knew what I was going to do. Some things are more important than work. And I've always taught my guys that. And so if they ever need the time, they just need to let me know, and I'll back them up. And so they let me go that day for that reason. I stopped by the field to feed a bunch of elk. I got on my truck, hopped onto a tractor, loaded up a bale of hay that weighs more than any pickup truck that you see out in the driveways of your homes, your parking lots. It's a massive bale of hay. You need a backhoe for that, and some forks. I lifted the bale up with the forks 15 feet in the air to put it inside the bull's feeder so that I could get done in time. And in my haste of doing that, I ignored a troubleshooting red flashing light on the dashboard of the tractor. The indicator light was a notice that my tractor was low on hydraulic oil. It'd be like, Jeff, it'd be like your gas light going off in your car.
Yeah.
And you trying to see how far you can get on that tank of gas with the light on.
Right.
And I did that for a couple of reasons looking back. Of course, hindsight's always 20/20. The first one, I was in a hurry, but that's the given one. The second one is, guess how many times I've done that before, never had a problem, never gotten. So I think there's a message for our listeners that is valuable for us to learn from. And that is, just because we don't get caught doing something that we see with our eyes or feel in our heart to know to be wrong, makes it a right. And I'm guilty of that, as perhaps all of us are at certain aspects of our life. And so we need to heed as best we can to those warning signs and try and listen with more intent, with the intent to try and do the right thing, knowing that none of us are perfect. And so I ignored the red light. The bale of hay did not have enough hydraulics in the hoses. Of course, this is all an aftermath assessment, but because there wasn't enough hydraulic oil in the hoses, the bale broke free from the forks in front of me when I put the tractor in reverse. She did, as you mentioned earlier, she did topple over and land right on my body. It was an open loft tractor, so no cage above me, just me and the bale of hay and a bunch of air. And perhaps God was there too. Bale rolls over, lands on my body, punches my head to the steering wheel. The shaft goes right through my mouth, breaking everything in its path. This has all been redone. And there's a scar on my neck where it's right there. You can see it right there. It's about 3.5 inches long. That's where the doctors went in and fixed all the bones that I crushed. I mean, I broke all of them, and it did sever 95% of my spinal cord, and I got to live through that.
Wow.
And I can't explain that to you. I don't have an answer for that. Doesn't make sense to me, frankly, that
Right.
some live and some don't. But I don't have to understand it. There must be something greater than what I understand, and
Yeah.
I can live with that. And that's what allows me to wake up every morning. So I hope that that message comes through without sounding preachy. I need our listeners to hear that.
Yeah.
That the fact that I don't have to understand everything because I believe that, and I'm not saying you have to, listeners,
Sure.
but because I believe that I don't have to understand why this or why that, or why did this have to happen to me, or why, because I don't have to ask or understand that, it allows me to wake up every morning with purpose, passion, and perspective. If my mind was to be stuck there, then obviously I wouldn't be on this podcast today, nor would I be traveling the world. I'd still be stuck watching Judge Judy. Very addictive show, by the way. And so I want to make sure we're clear on perspective, passion, purpose. For three
Amen.
P's: perspective, passion, and purpose. Allows me to wake up every single day. Jeff, thanks for asking. That's the story. That's what happened that night. I mean, I know there's a lot more to discover, but
Of
that's
course.
I mean,
Well,
that's it.
I think
That's where my life was to begin.
no, that's good, Chad. And I think it's not a story you enjoy telling. It's not a story probably the listener even likes hearing. Nobody likes to see anybody in pain. But the reason Chad's on the show today is because it gets pretty good. A matter of fact, it gets really good. And I don't know how often your interviews take this kind of a turn, Chad, but I've listened to a lot of your content, and I've had plenty of adversity in my own life. And I try to be a light like you are as well. And I got to tell you, your perspective on some things have really spoke to me. But I want to really, if possible, I'd like to hear from you a little bit from the perspective of your dad. This is a leadership show by and large, but I want to hear, I've heard you talk about your dad, and I got to tell you, everything you talk about inspires me. But when you talk about your dad, it speaks to me as a leader, as a dad, as a father, and as a leader of people. Your story of resilience is amazing. But I got to tell you that learning how your dad, Kelly, led you through this adversity spoke volumes to me as a leader. Your dad was the first person that you spoke to after the accident. Can you tell us what he said to you and how he helped lead you through this time? And I believe that the leaders listening, they can learn a lot from it. And that challenge that he gave you about how to be better at the different titles that you actually spoke about earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Obviously, the content is out there. It's not something that I share openly very often. So let's just give a warning in advance that we are talking on sacred ground.
And
Very,
I'm
very
okay
sacred.
if you would rather not.
So no, absolutely not. I obviously it's out there for a reason because we want to be transparent. Jeff is right. The first one to talk to me was my father. Let's just stop at that. Can you imagine the guts that might have taken? I mean, I got boys. I got kids. I don't think I could do it. I mean, I honestly, seeing my kid as I pictured this now as my boys have gotten older, I don't think I'd have the guts to walk into the room and tell the doctors, no, you're not going to give him some scientific prognosis. No, you're not going to talk to him about where he's at and what he's not at all. Shondell, to my wife, Shondell, if it's okay with you, I'd like to be the first to talk because my dad knows me just as well as Shondell does, but my dad knows I could turn south real quick. In fact, I did. You know that. If you know this, I mean, I did, but I don't think I could do it. It wouldn't be so much easier to let the doctors do it. To be a leader, it takes guts, it takes courage, and it takes courage to do the things that others wouldn't do. It takes guts to do things and stand up when you're a leader in your school, but you might not be known as a leader, and you're at a party and they want you to test out this powder that you know nothing about, or drink something that you've never drank before. It takes guts and courage. No different than this, this 40-plus-year-old man comes into a 49 or 50, close to 50, comes into a hospital room, and right as I wake up from a coma, and he's there to comfort me, and nobody else is there, and the room is dark and gloomy. It's shady in there, and they got the shades down, but it's in the afternoon. I'm guessing I remember that, and he's just thanks me for sticking around, and I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, "We almost lost you," and he said, "I don't know if I could bear that," and he says, "I got some really good news for you." And I said, what's that? And I'm asking the audience what that good news be. And some might be thinking, well, you're alive. Well, that's not, let's just be clear about that. Just because you all are alive doesn't mean that you want to be at times.
Right.
I mean, and just because people are alive doesn't mean they're not robbing air.
Hmm.
And we have to be intentional about the way we live.
Yes,
Everybody
sir.
gets old. True or false, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Growth has to be intentional. We have to want to learn and grow.
Yes.
So that's exactly why he was there. Is I think this was a growth moment for him,
Yes.
and also hoping that I would buy into that. But that he didn't cower away or run away, or he was right there when he knew that I was coming out of a coma. He got there and he asked my wife for a few moments before she came in, and she granted it to him. And he came in and he gave me the good news that I was around, and he also said that I had made a choice that wasn't probably the best choice, but that it caused some damage, and that he was not going to judge me because of that choice, and that I was still his best friend. And then he gave me some news I didn't want to hear. And I would ask the audience what that news is. And oftentimes when I ask that, people say, well, you can't walk and you're paralyzed. I don't like either one of those answers. I'm not saying they're wrong. I just don't like them. I've met people that have full function of all their limbs that are more trapped and paralyzed than I'll ever be in my lifetime.
Yes.
And it's because they refuse to adapt to a changing political environment. They refuse
Yes.
to adapt to a changing COVID environment.
Right.
They refuse to adapt to any kind of change in their life. I can only imagine how imprisoned I would be if I refused to change because my legs don't work. So I just want the audience to be clear, to be clear to the audience that as I've traveled throughout the world, I have met people that have full function of their body, 100% capability, that are more trapped than I will ever be. And I am 95% numb in my body, and I'm lacking motion in 95% of my body. And when people say that I can't walk, well, they're missing half. I mean, you can see my hands;
Right.
they're curled, they're bent, they're bony in structure. So that's a double whammy. So my dad didn't call me paralyzed because he didn't see it like that. He didn't say that I'd lost my legs. He said, "Son, you did break your neck, and they don't have any band-aids for the spinal cord. They fixed your neck, the bones, son. They used titanium. Said you'll never break it again. That's pretty good news, son. But you're not going to be able to use your hands the way that you used to, or your legs." And then he said, I have something I want to ask you. I want to ask you if you have the ability and courage to be a better farmer than you ever dreamed of being. Do you have the ability to be a better father to those two little boys than you ever dreamed of being with your legs? And I'm asking you if you have the courage and guts for all of us that's in this hospital here outside waiting for you. Do you have the courage and guts to be a better husband to that wife who's not going anywhere? And are you willing to be a better contributor to society and a better disciple? Whatever that means to our listeners. I'm not here to talk religion to anybody. And when my dad gave me those 5 calls to action, I said some things that probably are not appropriate to say on this podcast, and I've never repeated them since. But my dad was quick to turn around and walk out. And I think that's a powerful statement right there, without any words being said, because when he walks out of the room, not only am I alone, but I am unable to hit the call button to get the nurse in. I'm unable to call for help to the trach. I mean, I am truly alone.
Yeah.
That's a scary feeling.
Yeah.
You're on a hospital bed and you got tubes breathing around. You got no food, can't taste food, can't eat food, tubes going through your nose. You just wake up. And I mean, I understand being alone in a hotel room and travel. I understand that. You want to be really alone? Be alone and not be able to move or get you a bite to eat or a cup of coffee, or just like you just got a drink. Not able even to do that. That is truly a dark feeling, a feeling of complete loneliness. I believe as lonely as one can feel and still be alive and breathing on this earth. That's my personal belief.
Yeah.
And he did that because on the ranch, we say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink.
Yeah.
So there's a question for our audience right now as we proceed through the rest of this, which won't take us long to get through. Are you a teachable person, or are you an undrinkable horse? No matter what your age. Remember, you're either growing or you're not. You're all going to die anyway, just like me. Growth must be intentional. Yeah. And my dad left because I wasn't willing to learn and grow from what he wanted to share with me. He came back though, pretty quick, didn't take long. And he said, "Are you ready to talk to me, or are you still going to be defensive and use bad language?" He said, I didn't ask you to agree with me. I just asked you if you'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
I said, Dad, I can't farm. I can't get on the tractor. I can't hold her hand. We're going to get divorced. We can't have children. That's over. I can't zip up my pants. I can't eat any pudding. I can't eat food. I can't eat pizza. I can't put the worm on the hook to catch a fish. I can't ride my Harley. I can't play volleyball. I can't get on a horse. It just went on and on and on. He said, stop. Son, will you just stop just for a second? You notice what you just said in all those sentences? And I said, I just gave you the obvious. Man. I'm just telling you, Dad, what you told me. He said, no, I didn't tell you that. He just said, but I did notice what you said. You just said the word I, and we're not here to talk about you. There's a bunch of people out there that you can impact for the rest of your life and be better at everything I just said. So this meeting is not about you at all.
Wow.
And that was a turning point for me, because we would do things for others that we won't do for ourselves. You'd give away your kidneys for somebody that you love or somebody that you don't if you knew that you were a perfect match and you were having a hard time. Jeff, you wouldn't even care who it was.
Yeah.
You just say, cut me open, get the kidney to that person. I don't care what, get it to him now.
Yeah.
The problem is you can't give that kidney away unless you take care of it yourself first. Otherwise, that's lacking credibility. It's like writing a bad check.
Yeah.
And so my dad was trying to help me develop some credibility in my tank in order to put me in a place of potential to be a better husband, a better father, even though my intimate life with my wife would change forever.
Mm-hmm.
My coaching skills to teach the kids how to jump off the left foot and shoot with right hand, that would change forever. The way that I thought I would fish with my kids and the way that my dad taught me how to fish would change forever. And change isn't bad. It's just different the way I was taught. The kind of clothes that I would wear, how I would get those clothes on, how much I would eat, that would all change. But there are several right ways. There's just not one way to eat a Big Mac.
Right.
There's several ways to eat a Big Mac.
Right.
You can have it chopped up. There's several ways to put salad dressing on a salad. You don't have to stir it around with a fork and take one bite. You can get it in a box and have it shaken up, and there it is, man. The dressing's all there. It's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that once I grabbed a hold of that first piece he was trying to teach me, then doors began to open up, and I started to really dive into being taught, not just by him, but by the kids.
Yeah.
By Shondell, by therapists and doctors. But the real learning took place after. Don't get me wrong, they set me up to have some proper tools in place, but the real learning takes place after you leave the hospital, because then you're alone again, not surrounded by people where if you need a psychologist, she's right there.
Mm-hmm.
If you need a therapist, she's right there. If you need somebody to wipe your butt, they're right there.
Yeah.
At home,
Right.
you have to learn some preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
You have to learn, you go through those very humbling and I wouldn't call them depressing, but it could cause that very quickly.
Yeah.
And everybody goes through that. You don't have to be paralyzed. My wife said, you don't have to be paralyzed numb to go through depression or suicidal thoughts.
Right.
A lot of our listeners, a lot of our leaders have very, very down moments. They're not sure what decision to make. And so
true.
So
True.
I appreciate you asking about my father, but he's here. It's now been 21 years since that talk will play. I'll add one more thing too.
Yeah.
I learned this a few years back. My mother and I were having a conversation. I don't know how it began, but she told me that in the days leading up to me becoming awake, in the days leading up to my coma subsiding, she told me that my dad went without food or water for 4 days. Now, for 4, not for 40, but for 4, which I don't think I've ever done that. And I asked my dad about that, if he'd tell me why he did that and what happened. And his answer was profound, and I'm going to share it with the audience right now.
Please.
It's got nothing to do with spirituality. He said this: son, some things happened to me to prepare me to talk to you. And if it's okay with you, son, I'm going to wait to share that with you until I'm ready to share that with you. But I promise you that you'll hear it before I leave this earth.
Wow.
And here it's now been 21 years since the accident. And when he's ready, he'll come talk to me. And it hasn't been brought up since. And it's been a year and a half or 2 years since we've had that conversation. He knows. And when he's ready, he'll tell me. We talk every day. Not about that, but he knows. I want to know. And when he's ready to share that with me, I can't wait to learn it. But it must be very, very sacred to him. So
wow.
I'm excited to hear that.
Chad, this is first, thank you for sharing. And why this was such an important piece of your story was because of how your dad led. And to every leader that's listening who, yes, we're going through challenges. Yes, we're going through a pandemic. Yes, we have to change to remote work. Yes, there's mandatory vaccines coming if you're over 100 and people are going to leave. And what are we going to do? And how are we going to find labor in this market? And where is all the talent going? I get it. There's challenges. But I want to challenge you to be like Mr. Hymas, like Kelly Hymas, and find ways that you can serve others in the midst of their challenges. And that's what Chad's dad did. Chad's story is amazing and it's out there for the taking. But I love how your dad led. And what I love about your dad, and I don't know him, I'd love to meet him someday, but that wasn't, he didn't just show up for this event. He didn't just show up for this event and have the influence that he had in that hospital room that day. There were deposits that were made going way back before that earned him the right to speak into your life the way that it did. Because you said it yourself earlier, Chad, just because you have kids, it doesn't make you, it might make you a father. It doesn't make you a daddy. It doesn't give you a relationship. There's things that Kelly Hymas did leading up to that moment to earn the right to speak into Chad's life. And as a matter of fact, one of the stories, if you don't mind sharing, Chad, your dad was leading you way before the accident. Yeah. In high school, you were the captain of your basketball team. And there was a specific night that you invited the team over for dinner. And the conversation about one of your classmates, Jenny, went to maybe an unhealthy place.
Went south real quick.
Can you talk about that story and how you watched your dad approach Jenny with the 4 questions that he taught you?
Yeah, I mean, we were all prepping, and my parents were the Booster Club parents. And as you said, a father earns the right to be able to educate their children. That's not just given because you're called a dad. There's a lot of disrespectful kids out there. I would suggest if your kid's disrespectful to you, you can take away the car keys, blame them, get mad at them if you want. You might want to grab a mirror and understand why they're disrespectful to you, why they're not listening, why they're not doing what you ask them to do, or why they're not being influenced by you. My dad, he's earned it. I mean, didn't miss a game. Always let me know how much. Guy came home every night, 5 o'clock at night from work, took off his work shirt, put on a t-shirt, and went out and played baseball, catch, or basketball with me and my 2 younger brothers every single night. Wintertime, it was football. Summertime, it was baseball and basketball, but it happened every single night. We would sit on the couch and wait for him to come home. And my mom knew it. I mean, we were entangled to have that guy come home from work. And it wasn't a shirt that he put on, it was his t-shirt underneath. In fact, I'll share this. In our church, Tuesday nights, they have young men, young women activities at the church house. We were active in our church. Mm-hmm. We never showed up to young men or young women night. So the leaders, the pastor of our church, they call him a bishop, came with his counselors to see why the Hymas boys weren't there, and caught us playing catch with my dad out on the front yard. And the bishop ended up leaving by saying these words: "We wish every family in our area was like this. You guys have a nice night. Keep doing what you're doing." And that was it. I mean, that was it. My dad didn't have any squawks. He just said, "Well, maybe I could send him over. That's fine. I just thought I was just doing what y'all teach over there in that building. I'm just doing it.
I'm living it out.
Just living it out." That's what, which is exactly what he was doing. It's not that he was trying to stay away from the church. He knew about young men, and it was probably important to him, but he just thought, and so there wasn't too many times after that we didn't go to young men's after that, but we always got the playing time in. So yes, the invitation it was great. We ended up going, but that said, I'll never forget them coming over and them shaking his hand like, "Hey, we commend you for your integrity and your devotion to your family." And I'll never forget them shaking him, and rather than say, "Hey, we'd sure like to see your boys over to young men's, young women's. They need to be there." It was, "Hey, we sure wish all the other fathers in our district, in our area, in our ward, in our boundaries, that they were like you guys."
Yeah.
It was just like they were coming as a gut check. They dressed up in suits and white shirts and ties, and that was the message. And so back to the story. We were talking about the girl. My dad walks in, shuts off the AC/DC soundtrack that I had playing on my ghetto blaster with the boys in the room, and he drops to both knees in front of a bunch of high school jocks, basketball players. Mm-hmm. And he's not going to pray. This is better than prayer. He drops to our level or beneath our level.
Captain of the basketball team, by the way.
I'm saying straight up, man. I'm right there, and I got all my buddies right there. And he said, "I've heard every word you guys have said about this girl." He said, "I thought you guys were better than that. I've coached you guys up through playing ball, and I know you guys were better, but it's not your fault. I'm really I'm really disheartened about your captain. I thought he was better than that. Now he's talking about me, and I felt guilty. And then he took it one step further. He said, you know what? It's not his fault. It's really not his fault. He's a good kid and he's a good leader. I'm the one that's raised him. I thought I did a better job. I guess I didn't do so. I owe each one of you an apology. He gets up and he walks out of the room. So we're going to stop right there. A true leader takes ownership for everything going wrong in a company, even though it's not their fault.
That's right.
A true leader takes everything going wrong in their family. If a divorce goes south, instead of blaming the other spouse, they take ownership, so that when they go to progress, that they have the credibility and the ability to see what their potential is as a leader, but not because they're trying to define themselves as a leader. It just comes naturally through your behavior when you see it like that. Mm-hmm. So back to the accident, my dad told, you must own it, even though it wasn't entirely your fault, or you didn't want to cause the bale to follow. You have to own the wheelchair. You have to own it like it's yours and you belong to it. Not that it owns you. You own it. You own it when your kids have bad grades, Chad. You own it if you have an argument with your spouse, no matter whose fault it is. You own that.
Yeah.
And so the very next day of school, he showed up unannounced and uninvited, introduced us to the girl that we were making fun of. We got to know her. She became friends with the whole sky. I mean, it just followed suit. One by one. Followers started coming. It was unreal what happened to this girl. And they put her in a cheerleading outfit in her wheelchair and duct taped a couple of pom-poms to her hand, or a pom-pom to her one hand anyway. And she was cheering at our games, which now has impacted the lives of many people who have seen that and watched that, all because one man walked into a room and took ownership. And that took place in 1992. Wow. So here we are 20 years later. And what many people do not know is a few years back, my oldest boy was a senior in high school, and I was in Perth, Australia, giving a talk, kind of like we're talking now, to a bunch of people. And it was like 2:30 in the morning, Australia time, 5:30 in the afternoon, Utah time. I get a phone call from my son. So apparently he has no sense of time because he's waking me up. He says, Dad, I'm going to go to homecoming. And I said, great. And he takes it a step further and proceeds to tell me it's somebody that I've never met. And it's a very special girl. And he sends me a picture. And lo and behold, it's a Down syndrome girl. And I respond back and I said, I've never met her before, son. What's the deal with the picture and the pom-poms that she's holding in her hands and the red poster board that says, I'd be the happiest basketball player in this school if you be my head cheerleader for homecoming. That's what the sign said. He said, Dad, I was reading your book, chapter 8. Is it true what Grandpa did in your school, Dad? I said, I've never written anything that's false, but we probably ought to stop this conversation now and you can talk to your grandpa. I don't have the guts that Grandpa does to talk about it. Yes, it's true. Why don't you call your grandpa?
Wow.
And that led to other baseball and basketball and football players taking special ed students. And here we are now, the kids are graduated. And the bus that I have, which is handicap accessible and has a ramp, in fact, it's outside now because homecoming week's this week and they're doing some stuff with the special ed kids. This elegant, coach bus is being used in a parade for these special ed kids that are going to be treated like homecoming kings and queens, because it changed the whole culture of a school that wasn't the same school that I went to when my dad. So look at that. You know what that's called? That's not just called leadership. That's called legacy of leadership.
Yes, sir.
Long after my dad dies, long after he passes away, which he will, and I will too. What won't? That legacy will not leave.
That's right.
That'll live on forever. And so just one small going into a school. And he's not a teacher,
right,
by name. He's not an educator by degree. He's just somebody that saw an opportunity to go give, love, and serve a little more. And that's what we need to hit right there.
That's it, Chad. That's
Leaders, that's what they do. That's what Mother Teresa did. Mother Teresa didn't give herself the name of mother. There's no such thing as mother in the Catholic Church. They're called nuns. What separated her from other nuns? She went and found a place to serve and got people water they needed by contacting other people that had fresh water. And that went from city to city, cross country lines. And the followers started calling her their mom. She's never given birth to any child. Everybody started calling her mother.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, titles are given to you by your followers.
Yeah.
Not self-designated titles.
Yeah. True impact is made by who you are, not what you do.
Right.
What you do is head knowledge, and Who you are is legacy driven. What you do can drive some business results and some KPIs, but those are fleeting things. Sustainability, leadership sustainability is driven by who you are. And that's something that's really tough to teach. And that's why we have shows like this, so that people can understand these perspectives and truly change. You know, Kelly Hymas did that at a young age of Chad, made these deposits, and I'm sure there's millions of other stories, and there could
Right.
be a book written about Kelly Hymas in and of itself. But then you fast forward to this event, to this tragedy, and Kelly now has become the most likely candidate who has earned the right to make this investment. Why? Because he's made all of these deposits, and he's about to make the biggest withdrawal from his son that he's ever made, which is the mindset to fight.
Yeah.
And that's a leadership message, because leaders, sometimes you got to remember that it's really not about you. It's about the people that you serve. Yes, it's challenging. Leadership is challenging, but leadership is uphill. And when we make the right deposits, we can make the right withdrawals. And I love the story, not to take away from your story at all, Chad, but I love the story of your dad's leadership and how it impacted you. Because now, if somebody Googles Chad Hymas, you're going to see all the things I opened the show with: Hall of Fame, broken records on marathon in a wheelchair, international speaker, 300,000 miles a year. You're going to see all of that. I don't know, but I'd like to think that moment in the hospital that day from a leader called Kelly Hymas allowed for a lot of that to transpire.
None of that would have transpired without those deposits. And I love your metaphor of the deposits and withdrawals. I mean, I think a true leader earns that respect to withdraw and ask of his people. I mean, what's that famous quote that we all hear? Hey, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can give.
Yes.
In order to ask that kind of request from your people, you have to have lived a life of values and a system-based, value-based life.
Yeah.
In order to ask. So if our leaders aren't getting the results they want from their crews and their workers out in the field, or the people on the plant floor, maybe it's time to start working on the deposits, being visibly felt out with their people, to work on those deposits, so that when you ask something of your people, you've got their backing.
Yeah.
You know, my dad earned the deposits, and when he came and asked that of me, I did turn him away.
Yeah.
Let's be real, I did turn him away. But when he came back, I was willing to be taught and coached, because he deserves that respect. He's not there to offend me.
Yeah.
I did take offense, but he wasn't there to offend me. He was there to
So
help and guide and teach. And
So good. Chad, I want to be respectful of your time. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I'm hoping that with the few minutes that we have left, that you could speak to that leader that's listening right now, that's a little weary, a little worn. Maybe they're taking in some personal issues into the workplace, and it's just wearing on them. You know, you're somebody that's spoken all over the world. You're called one of the most inspiring people on earth. You're in the National Speakers Hall of Fame. You've set world records by traveling 513 miles in a wheelchair. That just doesn't happen. These things don't just happen. You clearly have been intentional. You've boiled this down to some intentionality, into some process. And I know we don't have a ton of time, but can you share your perspective on being intentional and being resilient and overcoming some challenges that maybe our listener can apply to their own journey?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's a couple of principles that apply to good leadership, and that is, first and foremost, if you want to be a good leader, number one, find somebody doing something great and recognize them for that. Find somebody doing something that's worthy of recognition, whether that's a child working on homework, or even maybe they're not, and you still recognize them for the good that they're doing. So even though they might be pulling a C or a D, you recognize them for what good they're contributing, you'll get better results. So find a place to show gratitude. It's one of the greatest tools that we can use as leaders. Recognize the strengths that people have, instead of always pounding on their weaknesses, or what they're failing at, or what they're not doing well at. The second thing that I would say is that as leaders, you embrace your followers as equals.
That's good.
You embrace them as equals. My dad dropped beneath our level in that bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
My dad stood on a knee to talk to me in the hospital room, in the dark room. He didn't stand above me. I meet a lot of people, and most of the time when I meet people, I'm looking up or at their belt buckle. When somebody drops a knee to me, they're making a deposit.
Wow.
right there. They're making a deposit
So
because they're
true.
making eye contact. They're right there with me. So, and the third and final thing that I would probably say is, it's as we go through this crisis in this pandemic, we talked about adapting to change. We've said it already during today's episode, but for those that choose to not change with a world that continues to change, I can make you this promise: life will change for you, and it will be a much more painful circumstance. I'm not telling you what to do. I don't know the right answer, but you do.
Mhm.
And so try and do what's right.
Mm.
And if you don't know what's right, listen to your gut and go with your instinct. Because even if you're rejected and you're turned down, at least you can go to bed tonight with some peace.
That's
You
good.
can go to bed knowing that you did what you thought was the right thing, and you can answer to anybody for that. Boss comes to you and says, "Hey, why'd you do that?" "I thought it was the right thing to do."
Right.
It's not, that's all. It's all. I thought it was the right thing to do. So I'm just going to make the assumption that the people on your podcast, they want to be successful personally. They want to be successful professionally, personally. They want to have good families and have good lives. And I'm just going to assume that one day they want to all go to a place called heaven.
Yeah.
And if they want to get there, there's a simple procedure to do that right there. I just try and do the best you can, and also with time allotted to spare.
Right.
Are you okay? Is it okay to fail? Absolutely. It's not those that fail that get ahead. It's those that fail faster.
Yeah.
So when you fall out of your wheelchair, or when you make a mistake, or you've hurt somebody's feelings, act with urgency. Leaders always act with urgency on mistakes they've made. They're quick to try and get things resolved without putting a band-aid fix over or sweep something under the rug to hide it. And we see a lot of that with all around the world. We have a lot of swept under the rug, a lot of hidden, a lot of deceit. Tough way to get credibility.
That's right.
And the last thing I'll say is this: when you breach trust, once you've breached trust, very difficult to get back.
That's a
Very
fact.
difficult. So do all you can to maintain the trust that you start building from the foundation, even though you might not be in agreement with your followers. I wasn't in agreement with my dad, but I trusted him. I didn't agree with what he said about being a better husband. Here we are on a podcast. Shondell and I just celebrated 27 years of marriage. We now have 4 children instead of the 2 boys. We've adopted 2 more from other countries.
That's great.
And I'm farming in other countries. So what my dad said was true. I just didn't see it back then. So.
Wow. Chad Hymas. That's real gold. That's real deposits. And I feel like this conversation could literally have no end, because it spoke to me. I know it spoke to our listeners, and there's a lot more content where that came from. And I feel like this conversation is one I would enjoy having for hours on end. But is there anything else that that you would like to add? At minimum, please tell people how they can find you, how they can absorb your content. I know you got some exciting projects going out for those that want to learn how to be better speakers. Tell us a little bit how we can engage with you.
No, if you just Google my name, you'll find content for free right there. It's open to you. I'm not looking to charge or make anything. Content is a word that we use in the industry, that we use as curriculum, or context of content. I don't know that I am educated to share content. I'm just sharing what I've learned through life as much as I can, and finding alternative ways to do that, whether it be through our video cast or our blogs or writing and journaling, and sharing that with as many people as we can to try and help people get through their journeys and do it in the most successful way possible. And so that's kind of our mission and our objective. So you can find that information for free at Chad Hymas, ChadHymas. And if you Google that, you can pull up YouTube, Insta, Facebook, linked. I mean, it's all there on. Today it's at your fingertips, and it doesn't cost you anything to see those videos, or to look up. You're free to use whatever you like, whether it be in a teaching moment or in a classroom. I'm not even looking or asking for credit for it. You use it however you deem fit. It was given to me, the opportunity to learn that. So, and as far as maybe a last thought, I would just ask our listeners to be very, very careful with what they're thinking right now as we end this podcast, because whatever you're thinking about what you've heard today will dictate your actions the second that we hit the leave button, the red leave button, or the second that you stop listening to the podcast. Whatever you're thinking in your head will dictate your actions as you're on your way home or on your way to work. Wherever you're driving to, wherever you're listening from, your desk, your kitchen, doing whatever you believe about what you just heard will drive your actions right now. Your actions will lead to the results that others get because of those actions. So stop what you're doing, pull over in a safe place, stop what you're doing, sit down in your chair and send a text off and let them know how much they mean to you, whoever that is, niece, nephew, grandparent, parent, kid, child, partner, whoever that is for you. Get the message off. Stop by the store and get their favorite ice cream on your way home and feed it up to them before dinner. I know you'll take hits from the wife, gentlemen. I get that. But just go out there in the front yard and dish them up some ice cream. And when they ask what's going on, thank them for letting you go to work every day. Don't tell them it's because of them or because of you that they get to have the extracurricular activities and the clothing and no, flip it. Give them the credit. Remember the deposits?
Yeah.
Make that deposit right there.
That's
No,
right.
I just want to thank you kids. I thought we'd just do something different tonight and have some chocolate chip ice cream and some bananas. And I didn't know how else to thank you guys. Just wanted to do something here. And I realized today that I spend most of my time away from you guys. So maybe we could have some ice cream. And I know mom's not real happy about it, but I think she understands the message, and I'll deal with mom, later on. I'll make her dinner or something. I'll watch her movie instead of my movie. We'll do something different. But I just want you kids to know how much I am grateful for you letting dad be gone most of the time. Because mom's the one that's doing all this stuff and helping us out and taking care of the house, and where she's working another job so that now we can try and make ends meet. But you kids allow us to be gone, and that's invaluable. Give them the credit. Find some way to give them the credit, not bolster yourself up, but to lift them up.
Yes.
That's our message.
Chad, I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate your message. I appreciate you being resilient. I appreciate you, April 3rd, and that journey from making a decision to literally change the world. You've changed many, many lives. And I appreciate the deposits that you left on this show today as well. So I appreciate the investment. And I would say to the audience, I'm hopeful that Chad's message inspired you to go and achieve the unachievable in your own life, just like he's done. Make sure that you go and check out the show notes to this episode. We're going to have application activities for you. We're going to challenge you with some things to be thinking about. You can get those at jeffhancher.com/show notes. There you'll find these application questions. I'm going to put up links to Chad's website and some of his content as well. And until we meet next week, I'm going to ask you to never forget this. You all have been set up to be champions in this life.